In the great swing state of Virginia, the latest polling shows Republican George Allen and Democrat Tim Kaine tied in their race for U.S. Senate. Not virtually tied, actually tied. They both have 44%. And into that incredibly tight race, Democrats today dropped a new ad hitting Republican George Allen for his own voting record on women's rights issues, trying to tie him to the anti-abortion record of Virginia's Republican legislature and governor this year. See that headline? Personhood and ultrasound bills advance in House. George Allen was not a member of the Virginia House of Delegates that advanced those bills this year, but Democrats apparently think it's a good strategy in campaigning against any Republican in Virginia to just remind everyone that that's the kind of stuff Virginia Republicans have been up to lately. Personhood rights for fertilized eggs and banning contraception and banning abortion and forced ultrasounds for ladies. And, you know, if you look closely at the polling in Virginia, you will see that Republicans are facing a real problem with women voters. The latest polling in Virginia in the presidential race shows President Obama up overall in the state by 2 points. But check out the numbers among women voters in Virginia. 18. Oh, President Obama up by an 18-point margin. And what might be motivating all these Virginia women to line up against the Republican candidate in this very, very swingy state? Well, here's an idea. A new Suffolk University poll out this week asked about the forced ultrasound law passed by the Republicans in the legislature in Virginia this year, signed into law by the Republican governor in the state, Bob McDonnell. Virginia voters opposed that law by 17 points. The anti-abortion crusade that has been undertaken this year by Republican-led state government in Virginia is not popular in Virginia. And now Virginia women are prepared to take it out on the presidency, right? They're planning to vote against the Republicans' candidate for president in their state by 18 points. And that was the context for a really important move made by Virginia's Republican Attorney General this week, a move that could be important for the presidential race in Virginia. Ken Cuccinelli this week certified a new set of regulations that are targeted only at abortion clinics in the state. These new rules are not for oral surgeons or plastic surgery centers. They're just targeting abortion providers. It's red tape that is specifically designed to make it economically impossible to operate an abortion clinic in Virginia. And that is what's expected to happen in the state. Most of the state's abortion clinics are in danger of being closed once these new rules go into effect. The state's health board had initially voted to exempt existing clinics from the most onerous of the red tape. But Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli weighed in. They went back and pushed the board to apply the new red tape designed to close the clinics to all the existing clinics in the state. And a couple of weeks ago, the health board did what Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli told them and threatened them to do. And now these new rules are expected to cause most of Virginia's 20 abortion clinics to close their doors. Bob McDonnell this week denied that the regulations are designed to shut down clinics. He said that the new rules are just going to contribute to the expense of operating an abortion clinic, calling it, quote, a cost issue. So technically, he wants you to know he's not just shutting down the clinics, he's just making it prohibitively expensive to operate one. Same diff, right? And if the clinics shut down because Bob McDonnell has made it too expensive for them to operate in his state with targeted regulation that's just about them and not about any other form of health provider, well, I guess just abortion access wasn't meant to be in Virginia. We've seen the same thing in Mississippi this year. The Republican governor there signed a new law that had the same approach, targeting the state's one remaining single abortion clinic in Mississippi for special regulations. Here's what he said about that.
I think it's historic. And today you see the first step in a movement, I believe, to do what we campaigned on, to say we're going to try to end abortion in Mississippi. We're going to continue to try to work to end abortion in Mississippi, and this is an historic day to begin that process.
Abortion is legal. You can't ban it. It is a constitutionally protected right in this country. Phil Bryant and Bob McDonnell and Ken Cuccinelli do not have the power to change that. What they and Republican lawmakers all over the country do have the power to do is cut off access to abortion. They can't make abortion illegal on paper. They can't strike down Roe versus Wade, except by electing Mitt Romney, right? Who will then pick Supreme Court judges who do that. But they can't make it so hard to get an abortion that it might as well be illegal. They can make the right to access an abortion a right in name only. After Republicans won big majorities in the states in 2010, they set about restricting access to abortion in ways not seen since Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973. And as a result of this new wave of restrictions, we're seeing signs of a return to a reality in America that is looking more and more like the days before Roe. Business Week published a really interesting story this week out of Arizona about a woman who's running a nonprofit program there to help poor women in Arizona find ways to access abortions. Discusses these new restrictions. You can no longer get an abortion outside Tucson or Phoenix in Arizona. And even then, you have to wait 24 hours after a forced ultrasound, which means many women are forced to travel hundreds of miles and then pay to stay overnight in one of those two cities. Pending another new abortion restriction, banning some abortions, one abortion rights advocate says she's making connections in other states outside Arizona where she might have to start sending women who need abortions across state lines. Quote, abortion is legal, but when you have to travel 300 miles to get to a clinic that provides the services you need, you don't really have access. In Texas, where women also face a forced ultrasound followed by a mandatory waiting period if they need an abortion, women are crossing the border into Mexico to buy drugs they hope will end their pregnancies from unlicensed pharmacists and unregulated pharmacies. One Mexican pharmacist who's been selling a drug over the counter says he heard of girls hemorrhaging after using that drug, saying, quote, I try my best to explain the consequences, but there's only so much I can do. Another pharmacist saying, quote, it sells, that's the problem, but I won't tell them how to take it. I just say, you might have problems later. In Texas, in other words, the back alley abortions of the days before Roe versus Wade are back. They just happen to involve unregulated pharmaceuticals instead of coat hangers. And in Arizona, women are mobilizing to shuttle patients out of state to get access to abortion. And in Mississippi and in Virginia, abortion clinics are in danger of shutting down altogether. Mississippi only had one left before these targeted regulations. Abortion access in this country is on the decline. According to the Guttmacher Institute, there are 25% fewer abortion providers in the U.S. than there were 20 years ago. And fewer American counties have abortion providers now than in 1973 when Roe versus Wade was decided. In Wichita, Kansas, there has not been an abortion provider since Dr. George Tiller was assassinated in 2009. This week, we learned that a foundation run by one of Dr. Tiller's former employees has purchased his old clinic and plans to bring abortion services back to Wichita if they can. That new clinic will face not only new restrictions on abortion that have been enacted by Republican politicians in Kansas and signed into law by Governor Sam Brownback, they're also going to be facing pickets and protests and pressure from anti-abortion groups in Wichita. The leaders of those groups are already vowing to shut the clinic down before it has even opened its doors.